A person that works at McDonald's walks into the Louis Vuitton store. Right behind them, a person that owns a multi-million-dollar a year car dealership walks in right behind. They both go to the counter and they look at the wallets that are at display, the nice leather wallets. One looks at it, sees the price tag, it's $1,000. The other person sees the price tag, it's $1,000. One person looks at it and says, this is just so expensive. Person working at McDonald's looks at this and says, this is just egregious. The other person looks at it and says, oh, this is quite cheap. Only $1,000? Oh, wow. Let me get 2 of them. And actually, let me get 3. The second individual will say, oh, what a greedy bastard. Why the hell does he need 3 wallets? The other guy can't even afford it. Well, I don't even want to consider that scenario. I want to look at the mindset of the situation. Because if you can understand the mindset, then you can understand the worldview, the philosophy. And if you can understand the worldview and the philosophy, you can replicate the actions that led the individuals to the lifestyle that they have based off of what? The worldview. Because the worldview dictates the actions dictate the behavior dictates the lifestyle, and the lifestyle dictates what you have in life. But it all starts with the mindset. So you have the mindset of a winner and you have the mindset of a loser. Now, let me explain it because it has nothing to do with money. It has to do with how you perceive a situation. What if I told you there's no such thing as cheap or expensive? What if there's only rich and poor? What if that $1,000 wallet isn't expensive? What if you just don't have money? Now, I know this may sound crazy as a concept, but when you understand this concept, you realize that you can change money and morph money and multiply money extremely quickly by understanding the principle of multiplying your time capital. Now, your time capital at this current state, for most of you guys, is expended at a 1-to-1 ratio. So you spend X amount of hours and you yield X amount of dollars. Now, if you want to become wealthy, you want to be able to spend X amount of hours and you want to be able to create a trickle effect of money that has kind of like an echoing effect. You want to be able to get paid at multiples for your current investment or your current investment of time or effort, whatever it may be. But most people do not look at it that way. Now, why does the McDonald's worker look at that $1,000 wallet and say, this is expensive? The reason they say it's expensive, my friend, it's not because of the wallet. It's not even because of the price tag. It's because of the amount of time that it took them to make the $1,000 that will then lead them to acquire that purchase. So when they look at the wallet, they're not looking at $1,000. They're looking at all the hours and energy and time and effort that it took them to make that $1,000. Does that make sense? Now, the other individual that owns a multi-million-dollar car dealership, they didn't really have to work a whole lot for that $1,000. Therefore, they have no real appreciation for that money because they didn't really put massive amounts of effort towards it. I'm not saying that they don't appreciate the money. I'm saying the money just doesn't hold as much weight. Why? Because there's not as much time, energy, and attention attached to it. So in the multiplication of wealth, it's not just multiplying your investment vehicles, but it's not just multiplying your teams, but it's multiplying every area and growing every area of your life in a balanced, organized, and systemized fashion. Now, once I understood this concept and it really hit me, I asked myself, okay, now how can I buy things for the least amount of time possible? Not how can I buy things for the least amount of money possible and be a cheap ass, but how can I work the least amount of possible time and yield massive amounts of money? And what I came to realize is that one thing is to make money and another thing is to multiply. That's why in Capital Club's ecosystem, creating is one thing, multiplying is another mindset, and then preserving is a completely different animal in and of itself. So in the multiplication process, what you do is you need to find things, investment vehicles that are low risk, high reward. What does this mean? This means that you shouldn't be buying something, an asset class, when it's overvalued, clearly overvalued. When you look at the watch market, when a watch is 500, 600, 700% over its retail price within weeks of launch. That's overpriced. It doesn't take a genius to understand that that's an overpriced thing. Now, there are exceptions to the rule, but for the general rule of thumb, this idea of massive swings is not really common. So you need to be able to base your investments in your multiplication on what I like to call the winner's formula. Now, the winner's formula is very simple. I don't bet on products. This is my personal thing, guys. I don't bet on market cycles. I don't bet on real estate. I don't bet on speculation. I bet on people. And yes, there's speculation attached to people, but I bet on winners. So some people like to multiply their wealth by investing in companies. I like to multiply my wealth by investing in people. So how I do this is through my private equity firm. So yeah, I make money in the stock market. I make money in e-commerce, but that's just multiplying fiat. I want equity. If you want to build an estate like we talked about, you need to own. So in the multiplication process, it's about ownership. It's about ownership that gives you cash flow. And once I understood that I could stop trading my time for money and that I could really have anything that I wanted if I organized myself effectively and efficiently, then I began to work completely differently. It wasn't about how many hours I worked, because I was willing to work 40 hours fucking straight if it meant that it would yield 400 or 500 hours worth of return. It's all in proportion to what you're receiving. So once you understand this, it's not just about addition, but the multiplication vehicle comes from equity ownership. It comes from not spending your principal capital. Most people are out here spending their principal capital. Let's say you have your e-commerce store and makes $100,000 net profit in a year. You can't go and spend that money. That's not yours to spend, right? You need to figure out where that money is going to be going. You can pay yourself, but it's not yours to spend. In your corporate goals, financial goals, in your personal financial goals, or in your estate, not go out and spend it in the club. That's why most of you guys can't sustain wealth, because it's not just about making a ton of money. It's about multiplying it. Like I mentioned before, at some point you can't work, right? So you need money to be working for you. And the sooner your money works for you, the stronger it works, right? And the more consistent it gets and the more solidified it becomes. I've done it through private equity. It works, and it works extremely well. But finally, it's the preservation of wealth. And the preservation of wealth comes from a very simple process that I like to call longevity outlook. And longevity outlook is an exercise that I like to do on a daily basis where I look at the long-term picture. In social media, it's extremely easy to get saturated with what somebody else is doing in that day. You get FOMO that somebody bought a nice car, you want to compete. But when I look long-term, well, then I've established my estate goals and I'm just working towards filling up that nest. Why? Well, because you never know when shit hits the fan. You never know when something goes sour. And inside this ecosystem and this equation of creating, multiplying, and preserving your wealth, becoming financially literate, mitigating the risk that is associated with onboarding people into your plan by being educated and nurturing these relationships while simultaneously having the necessary goals and the predictable cash flow models, because you understand the gaps in the market that will give you the edge to provide value. Well, then, my friend, you're one step closer to becoming wealthy, healthy, successful, and financially free. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this equation that I've conjured up because, well, frankly, it's the equation that I use. And I think that it is replicatable, it is consistent, and by no means it is limited to one country or one perspective. You can take my model and adapt it and make it your own, but you need to be able to think long-term. Make your goals, build your team, be proactive towards action, be proactive towards making good decisions, not reactive decisions. Set your financial goals, hit your financial goals, build your estates, provide value to the marketplace, and you, my friend, will be very successful.